everyone, this is Joanna Mickle with Health Empowerment Center, and today's book review is actually a set of books. Again, I kind of grouping them together because to me they kind of go together, and so it's kind of leading you if you want to do all the books or you can choose which of these four. It's actually a set of four by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and they kind of build off of each other. That's kind of why I'm going to review them all together. They're really books that really incorporate the mind and body for mind-body health, you might say, really showing the power of the mind over the health of the body. And so when, a lot of stress is at the foundation of a lot of illnesses, especially chronic illnesses such as hypertension and type 2 diabetes, which are two probably that's the most connected to stress. And stress starts in the mind with how we perceive and how we think and what our thought patterns do. And so he really brings out how the mind, how we think, creates our internal environment that can produce health issues, and then also how we can change our mind to change our internal environment to bring back health and wellness. So the four books that we're going to look at today and kind of summarize for you and then kind of give you a little bit of my takeaway from them are these four here: Evolve Your Brain, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, You Are the Placebo, and Becoming Supernatural. These are his four books, starting with the top one. So what are each of these telling us, right? Are these books about? So Evolve Your Brain, his first book here, is the science of changing your mind. So it literally is a lot of science in this book, a lot about neuroscience and how the brain maps memories and how we get stuck in a way of thinking. And that's what gets us into a problem, is that we're constantly in the same thought patterns, creating the same emotions, creating the same moods, which creates the same internal environment of neurotransmitters, neuropeptides, and hormones. Now, what are these three things, you may be wondering? If you're not, haven't got a physiology or anatomy and physiology background, these are communication molecules within the body. And our thought patterns create these molecules that communicate to the body to do something, usually in the realm of survival or stress responses, such as elevated heart rate, elevated breath rate, elevated blood glucose or blood sugar for energy, etc. So a lot of different things going on in the body that can lead us over time to having some health issues. But he gets into the neuroscience of it and why we stay in certain thought patterns, and then he gives us ideas of how can we start beginning to change the thought. But the big issue, or the way that I see it from the things that he explains here in this book, is like our thought pathways or in the mind are kind of like trail systems. Like if you went hiking out in the woods in a certain, area that's hiked a lot. So they have a trail system. Usually in national parks, they have a trail system and they give you a map and you follow the map and you go down these trails that take you around and to see different sites and then to come back and to leave. Now, most of these trails have been walked over and over and over again. So sometimes you don't even need the map per se unless there's a specific place you want to go, so you know what trail you go down. And that's kind of like your thought process in the mind. They're easy to see, you're easy to go down, and it's like this thing triggers that thought, that thought, that thought. So you go to work, you know how to get there. Your brain almost does it subconsciously, which it does because those trails are just so easily mapped. They already know. You see this, you turn right. You see that, you turn left, and then you're at work in 15 minutes. You get out the car, and half the time you don't even remember driving down the road because your mind has gone somewhere else while it's traveling your route to work. The way we respond to people has almost become, subconsciously. You see a certain person, they trigger this emotion, you end up responding either, it's like, hey guys, how you doing? Or if it's somebody you don't like or have a negative emotion to that's been kind of created in there, you have that kind of response, an irritable response, etc. And it just kind of happens automatically. These are the pathways that we've created in our mind that creates an internal environment. If we're constantly being triggered by these thoughts that take us down these certain pathways, we create the same internal environment over and over again. And that could be either good or bad. It's all dependent upon the types of hormones, neurotransmitters, and neuropeptides that we're creating in the system and what effect they're having on our body. So, and we end up getting used to those emotions and feelings. And he talks about this is where we get into a hard time that those habits are made. So it's really hard to step out of those ways of thinking, step out of those pathways or behaviors because they feel abnormal. So we're kind of addicted to these behaviors, these thought patterns, creating the same emotions, the same feelings, the same body, physiological responses in the body, and we get stuck in them. And so to try to change the way we think. So if we think about work, let's say, most people, it's like, oh, Monday I got to go to work. And so it's like we've already created that negative response to it. And so therefore we create a stress response to work, but that's what we're used to. We think work, oh, and if we changed it, it's kind of hard to say, oh, yay, I get to go to work, right? Yay. And the body is like, am I supposed to be happy? And then something triggers and throws us back into the normal pathway. So it makes it odd. So in some individuals, I think he brings it out in this book, if I might be getting it confused with another, but when trauma happens and somebody's been in repetitive trauma, or chronic situations of such as abuse as a child, verbal abuse or different things like that, when they get out of that situation, they don't really know how to respond. So they have what's called a new, I don't believe he mentions it here, but he's kind of alluding to it, is we used to hear a fight, flight, or freeze for the stress. Well, now we have fawn and fiend are two other ones because the stressors that are in our environment now are a little bit different from, back in the Paleolithic times and different things when you're running away from a bear or you're having to chase down a bear to get your dinner. Is these ones are when you're in individuals that are abusive, whether verbally or physically, that you're trying to placate them would be fawning. And so if you don't have, you'll find people that try to make everything happy because they want to keep, who could be their abuser happy. Same, and then with fiend, they're just used to being constantly having conflict, that they create conflict because they don't know what to do without those neurotransmitters, those hormones and things going in the body, creating that turmoil that's become so used to their internal environment that if we don't have it, it's very uncomfortable and they don't feel normal, so to speak, because that has been their environment for so long. And so it creates these perpetual habits or thought processes and things that leads them to these health conditions. That's an extreme case, of course, but we have them in small amounts too. And so this is what Evolve Your Brain is about, is teaching us that we get stuck in these ways of thinking because we're used to having a certain internal environment that feels normal per se. But it's leading us to having these health concerns or health issues such as hypertension or type 2 diabetes or elevated heart rate, anxiety, and the list goes on. And so to change those internal health issues, we have to change the internal environment. So we have to look at our thought processes and see where do we need to make some tweaks, and then we begin to see it. So he gets into the science of all that. He talks about the neural pathways. He talks about the chemicals and the physiology, you might say. So this is more in the science realm of how the brain operates and how we have to change our thought patterns to change the internal chemistry, to change the internal environment. So that's the synopsis of this one here, Evolve Your Brain, the Science of Changing Your Mind. So if we go into his next book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, he basically takes the information from the first book and gives you ways to begin to put it into practice. So this is kind of your practical book on being able to change your thinking. Like it says, how do you lose your mind and create a new one? So you have to make new neural pathways. You have to make a new, I call it hiking trails in the brain, new ways to respond. And we have to get over that hump of it feeling abnormal or different or uncomfortable, because it is uncomfortable because the body's like, what are these? And we're changing up how many we're getting out there. I'm actually going to be happy instead of sad today. I'm actually going to be, find this person pleasant to be around as opposed to be annoyed or irritated by them. I'm going to enjoy my job. I'm going to find the passion in it that I used to have, or, find a new way to look at it. All these different ways and beginning, and it has to start consciously. That's what he says. It's a conscious thing, because everything, once you've done it so often, and the body, those pathways, like I said, are so easy to follow that you just naturally go down there. There's a trigger and you turn that way. Whereas now you're going to say, okay, I'm going to ignore that trigger and I'm going to make a path this way. And so you have to, kind of like with the trail system, if you're deciding you're not going to allow that trail to be used anymore, you have to let it get grown over. So you have to maybe put up a roadblock that says, don't go this way, trail off limits. And you make a new one. You put a new big sign that says, go this way. So in your mind, you have to say, go this way. This is the way I want to go. I don't want to be irritated anymore because that's causing me these issues. I want to be, okay with it, or I want to be happy, or I want to be indifferent, may be the word. Whatever that may be, to stop the negative and get a more positive response. Or maybe to kind of become more motivated, find a motivational, pathway or thought process or behavior. And so then you create this new neural pathway, which creates new neurotransmitters, new actual links in the brain, new neuropeptide blends, whatever it is, and then creating different hormonal balancing responses that maybe even it turns down the stress response in the body, lowering the heart rate, lowering the breath rate, lowering the blood sugar, lowering the blood pressure, so that you're in a rest and digest state as opposed to the stress response or the fight or flight response. And so you start moving down that pathway. It's going to be uncomfortable because you got to kind of weed out the things, cut away the extra stuff in the trail, opening it up to where it's more visible for you to go. And each time because again, you're going to have to do it very consciously, going in that direction. When you have that trigger, instead of going to the right, you go to the left. And then as you use it more and more, that grows over, and this new neural pathway becomes more prevalent. And in the mind, that's how it does. That pathway gets down-regulated, the other one is up-regulated, and it's quicker to go that way. And that creates a new habit. Because habits are like well-worn pathways, well-worn. So we want to do away with that and create a new one. So he gives you some visualization exercises, meditations that he has used with his clients. And so, in his workshops and stuff. So that's the breaking the habit of being yourself. He's taking that science and making it a practicality for you to be able to start changing your mindsets, to change your internal environment, to help with your health and wellness and your and life overall. So that is breaking the habit of being yourself. Now we're going to this is really just overall wellness. This is going to get into more of the health side and really gets into some of the things that really get into research, especially in pharmaceuticals, that they get a little frustrated with, is the placebo. So in this book, it's called You Are the Placebo, Making Your Mind Matter. He gets into the science of placebo a bit, and how our mind is so powerful in bringing health and wellness, even to some pretty critical conditions. So he gets into a bit of what's known as spontaneous healing. He talks about the placebo and why there are scientists that says, well, if placebo is such a problem, we need to figure out why placebo works, why it's hard for some medications to actually overcome the placebo effect. The placebo does just as well as it does. So why is that? And so, he kind of gets into placebo and how we can actually begin to use placebo for our own health and wellness, and to maybe even help us to not have to use so much medication or higher intervention types treatments that can have quite a bit of side effect. And he uses that in some of his workshops. And so this one really talks to that understanding that how we think plays a big role. And he's got some examples of where placebo has helped people to overcome some pretty nasty diagnoses, such as cancers, certain types of autoimmune conditions, and so forth, that are pretty degenerative, and help to reverse those illnesses by just changing how they thought about it. So he also talks about the adverse of placebo, which is nocebo. And that was found that in some individuals, they were given a misdiagnosis of cancer and a prognosis of only having a few months to live, and they actually died. And then when an autopsy was done on the individual, they did not have the condition that was given to them. And so they took the they believed what they were told, and their body pretty much manifested that response. And so he's like, it's pretty powerful when a health practitioner gives you a prognosis and diagnosis, that how you respond to it can, manifest either in the positive or negative, depending on which you choose to take. And so he kind of gives a warning, you could say, to healthcare professionals on how they present the diagnoses, because that can determine how well they respond to the treatment protocol that you're prescribing, because they have to agree with you, and if you're there to help them to heal, is to give them that understanding that how they approach their treatment is going to determine their success in recovery. And so that's the You Are the Placebo, to show how much our mind does matter in our health and wellness. He also even, just remember, he does in this book also talk about getting hexes and voodoo curses. People have actually taken on that same kind of nocebo effect from those types of things, and it's actually affected their health, though there was no problem at all. So, again, the mind is so powerful, because, again, you go into those neurotransmitters and neuropeptides and the hormones that create from stress, the fear response. You're going to create an environment of fear and stress, which upregulates a lot of our pathways that can lead to chronic conditions that can cause very, very adverse effects to our health and well-being. So it's very important how we think about mind. Now, if we go to his last book here in this series, Becoming Supernatural, basically, like with the first two, he's taking the information from You Are the Placebo and put it into practicality and Becoming Supernatural. So he has some practical meditations and exercises in this one on how you can utilize the placebo to create the life you want. And that's more than just health, but even the environment that you create to bring to you what you're looking for in your life: a successful career, a successful marriage, a successful relationship, an environment of whatever is your choice, of peace and prosperity. Is all comes down to your mindset, because you attract what you're putting out there. So if you're wanting an environment of love and prosperity, you have to send out that energy from the way you think and act. You can't really expect to get roses if you're sending out thorns. Of course, thorns and roses go together, but what I'm saying is you can't, they say you can't attract flies with vinegar. You need some sugar. So that's kind of the idea of Becoming Supernatural. So he has meditations and visualization exercises. He talks a bit about some of his conventions he does, and learning events that he does that helps you to be able to put this in action. If you want to go a little bit more practical than just reading the book, he does have conventions that he holds for the knowledge to be able to put all this information in action. So what was my takeaway from this series of books? Is that we have a lot of power in our mind. Being able to recognize that our thoughts patterns creates our environment, not just even internally for our health and wellness, but even externally on the things that we plan to have. Again, you can't expect to meet your goals if you're constantly thinking that, something's blocking me. It's going to be too hard. I can't do this. I can't do that. But changing our mindsets to say, hey, it might take me some time, it might take a little work, but as long as I keep plugging, I can do this. And if I find, ways to help myself, finding new ways of thinking, I can get to where I want to go. And so I took away from this is that we are so empowered in ourselves that we have infinite possibilities. I liked one of his things he said in Becoming Supernatural is that when we let go of being somebody, we become nobody. But when we can become nobody, we can become anybody. And you're probably like, how does that go together? So when we think we are somebody, we've limited ourselves to one way of thinking. And so when we let go of that thinking and become nobody, so we are nothing at the time, so there's no adjective put to us, we can become anybody, because now we have a choice. We have infinite possibilities of what we can be. So if we let go of, certain ways of trying to get somewhere. Our own little, we're kind of stuck in little boxes by whatever we've been taught through the, our upbringing and stuff, is then we have to let go of some of those things to say, who do I really want to be? What is my real ultimate goal? What purpose do I want to have here in this life? Let me back off of all of the things that I thought of myself, and let's reinvent myself to what I want to be. I mean, I'm really far from where I ever thought I would be when I was younger. I only wanted to be a wife and a mother was kind of all that I saw, because I loved my mother and I've held her in very high regard. Plus my faith was very big into that, and I still think mothers are a great place to be, and a wife to be a good support and nurturer to my children, my family. But it's kind of moved. The Lord wanted something greater for me. And so I'm on a journey, and it's been going on for a while, about 9 years, to become a natural health practitioner, a Chinese medical practitioner. And right now I'm doing health empowerment coaching to empower my clients to take back their health and wellness, and by educating and giving them the tools to be able to have this kind of thinking that I can be whatever I'd like to be. It's just letting go of the things that may be hindering me in my thought processes or my habits and my lifestyles and my behaviors. And so I would have never thought myself on this type of path of life. The Lord kind of led me to it through my studies, and then getting exposed to this through one of my courses in school. I realized, wow, there is so much more we can be when we let go of our ideologies a lot of times, and our narrow thinking on what's beneficial for myself, that I could actually realize I could nurture so many more as a holistic health practitioner, to nurture a community more so than even just my own small little family. So I see that it's become greater than what I ever thought as a child or as a youth. So that was my takeaway in this set of books. Again, it's Evolve Your Brain, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and You Are the Placebo, and Becoming Supernatural. These are the books that I discussed today. And you can find these, again, at your Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and most of your book retailers. You can even find him on his website. I think it's drjoedispenza.com, but I'm not for sure, sorry. But you can, Google him. You'll find his books and information. And like I said, they're great if you're looking to be empowered to see how much your thinking plays a role in your health and your life overall. If you have any questions or have a book that you'd like me to read and to give my review on, please send them to me. And check me out on www.healthempowermentcenter.com. I'm also on Spotify on the Mindful Table with Dr. Mommy Minsima Horn. And I hope to see you at our next review.